fantastic show. I'll just turn my phone off. I'm proud to bring on stage our honourable guest, Mr. John Reynolds. Hi all. Right, John, obviously a fantastic, career. First of all on dirt bikes, but pretty much your road racing career has been fantastic. Many British championships. But you started life on a Valicette.
Yeah, I did actually. I mean, first of all, started motocrossing when I was 8 years old, but that was, schoolboys, and when you couldn't buy motorbikes, you had to build them, so my father built that. But my real passion really was road racing, and all my heroes were, John Cooper's around today. I was just telling him I had a picture of him on my wall, Barry Sheen, all people like that, and I really did want to go road racing, but of course the cost of the sport was absolutely incredible, so I couldn't really afford to do it. And then my dad used to race back in the day after the war, and he had this old bike in the back of the shed that was just on his rims, and it was absolutely tasered, really, to be honest with you. It was a 1934 250 MOV Velicette. Anyway, Dad went to watch a vintage race one day and came back, and I started quizzing him about it. And then I put two and two together, and I thought, you know what, we've got a bike in the garage, we could probably build that up and go racing. And so that's where I put that point to him, and he sort of thought maybe, but then Mother said absolutely no way. She'd seen people being killed back in the day when they used to go watching racing, and said my son's never going to go racing. Anyway, she left home. And we dragged the bike out and started building it. But anyway, Mum came back in the end, but it was touch and go at one point.
So obviously, setting off on the schoolboy motocross side, obviously quite quick, winning championships, being successful. It was always your focus, really, in your head, to be road racing.
Yeah, it really was, and as I say, that's where all my heroes were. Back, Roger De Costa was, obviously, you probably don't know that, but a motocross Grand Prix legend, and he was my hero in that side. But as I say, all my big heroes were road racers, and I just really wanted to do it. And my first road race meeting, I think, was in Mallory Park when I was probably 6 months old. So we started from there. I actually remember watching John Cooper and Agostini at Mallory Park. Some people might remember that, when John Cooper beat Aggo. I was actually gutted because I wanted Aggo to win, but I can't believe it now, But so as I say, I grew up watching all the road racing, and I really did think that was really what I wanted to do. But honestly, never thought I'd have the balls to do it, to be quite honest with you. It's a dangerous sport, and I used to lie in bed thinking, even before I got on the Velicette, what am I letting myself into here? But once you get on the bike and everything else, it's the best thing in the world.
You've just mentioned your father. Obviously, from my side, I've always seen your father around the paddocks, especially the BSB is obviously your biggest fan. But was he a big influence? Obviously being an ex-racer, did he push you hard, or was he kind of like my father has always been around, but luckily he's always been there to help, but never stuck his nose in too much and been at the forefront and let me get on with it myself.
Yeah, my dad, I think he just gave me the tools to do what I had to do, and he never really pushed me. He'll tell me if he thought I was doing something wrong, and probably how to make things better, but he'll never say, actually I'll tell a lie, he did say that people are quicker than you in this part and that part, so, but he never really put that pressure on me where he was disappointed. And it's actually hard because I've got a son now and I'm trying to get him to do things, and I'm actually harder on my son than my dad was on me, so I've got to pull back a bit on that. I realise that now.
So, we was chatting earlier, your boy's 18, so is he going to ride motorcycles, compete, any dirt bikes, anything like that at all?
Yeah, he's got a dirt bike and he rides it, but we've got a few difficulties at home with this side of things, and whether or not he's ever going to be able to race, he desperately wants to. He wants to go to the Ron Haslam Race School and have a go around with Ron and with me and that, but we'll see what happens, maybe.
So, obviously, this Velicette you rode, whatever year it was, in the 80s, I guess.
1986 it was,
yeah. It didn't take you very long to win your first British Championship from there. He was obviously naturally gifted, but did you Was it just natural talent that brought you through to your first British Championship, or was it blood, sweat and tears? Was it a lot of crashing and learning the hard way?
It was blood, sweat and tears and a lot of luck. It really was, honestly. I mean, the Velocette we thought was going to be an easy, a cheap way of going racing, but we found out it actually wasn't. I think the fourth race I had, I'd actually managed to win a race in the third meeting, and then the fourth race we went to Snetterton and blew the top off the engine. So we realised that I think what Dad had then seen a bit of potential in me, and he offered to buy me a 350 LC to go production racing, which was the best thing we ever did, really, and that's where I went. But all along the line, I've been very, very lucky. I rode the LC, but because I was racing motocross back in the day when I was a schoolboy, I was involved, and I rode for Kawasaki, which is Ali Wright, Colin Wright's son, and well, Colin Wright was his son, if you like. So I had some contacts along the way, and a guy called Vic Lamb, he was quite a bit to do with Kawasaki when I was motocross.
Wayne Lamb's car.
That's right, yeah. And he came to watch us at Cadwell Park one day and watched me, and he gave me a phone call the next night and said, there's a guy I know that's got a TZ350 Yamaha. He's looking for a rider. Do you fancy having a go with him? You know, if he likes you, he might offer you the chance. So I gave him a ring, and he came to watch me race. And so Vic Lamb put me in touch with that guy, and I started racing the 350Ts. I managed to win a British Championship with that. The next year, I was riding the 600 for Pageants on a Honda in the CBR Challenge. And again at Cadwell Park, one of the riders from the factory Kawasaki lads hurt themselves in practice. Big Lamb spoke to me and then to Colin Wright. Colin Wright phoned his dad, who was at a Grand Prix in Holland, motocross, and said, what about John Reynolds on the bike for the day? And they offered me the chance to do that. And of course there's massive pressure there, and I sort of thought, dare I do it, you know? I thought, you know what, you're only here once, let's have a go at it. So I rode the bike and managed to ride it reasonably well. And then they offered me a bike for the rest of the year, and then a contract for the year after. So I'd only been racing a year and a half before I was, you know, a paid rider. So again, very, very lucky.
So obviously, I mean, you know, you won your first British Championship, and then kind of the Kawasaki thing stuck. You obviously made a name and impressed them, and then went on to ride in, you know, superbikes. I think the first superbike meeting I ever went to was Cadwell Park, which would have been 1991, and all I can remember was, I think you and Brian Morrison riding the Team Green bikes, and obviously the Nortons were there and stuff. But back in that day, it was obviously very competitive, some big names, you know, an awful lot of talent doing the British Championship. But again, it didn't take you too long to adapt to the bigger bikes in those days and start winning.
Well, again, you know, I rode the 250 for Kawasaki and the 600, but really I wanted to go down to superbike. That's where it was at, and I had a couple of ride-outs on the older Kawasaki, which really wasn't that much of a fantastic race bike. But when the new one came in for 91, I went out to Malaysia and tested it. I thought, this is a weapon, you know, we can do something with this. So I managed to get a ride on the superbike for 1991 on the new ZXR, I think it was at the time. And you know, I think we managed, 6th place at the end of the year, but we're up, and it was a bit of a funny year really, because we were on Pirelli tyres in 91. And although I could run with the lads for the first 5 or 6 laps or half the race or whatever, I'll lose time after that. And Colin Wright was at me, you know, what's going off, you're not fit enough for this and the other. I said, Colin, it's the tyres. I'm not slagging Pirelli off, but at the time the Dunlops were better, in my opinion. So Colin called my bluff, and one day at Oldham Park, he said, right, and John, we've got to put a set of Dunlops on your bike for practice, Sunday morning warm-up. And I went second quicker straight away, and I won the first race of the year with the Kawasaki. And that was then, we moved to Dunlops, and we were strong pretty well the last 2 or 3 meetings of that year. Then in 92, we started obviously with Dunlops and managed to win the championship. So, but yeah, you're right, I mean, there's some fantastic riders back in the day, you know, Ron Haslam, Rob McElhenney, Terry Rymer, you know, Brian Morrison. But there's some good racing that year.
Now, obviously going back to when you started racing, for me, John Reynolds always seemed to be obviously a very focused, I'm talking about your attitude now in and around the paddock, and especially on the start line or anywhere. obviously very focused, determined, quite an intense character, but obviously took everything very seriously. My point being is, when you first started your racing, was it purely all fun and having a laugh and enjoying yourself? You know, back in my day when I started club racing to begin with, you was in the clubhouse pissed on Saturday night and racing on Sunday.
Well, funny enough, you know what, I had a means to an end. I knew when I first started racing, I probably had about 5 or 6 months where I could afford to do it. So I knew I had to make it count. You know, I was on the, I think I was a sign writer at the time, earning £120 a week, so that's not going to go very far. So I thought, you know, I'm going to take this job really, really seriously and just try my best, if I, you know, for a year and see what happens. And lucky enough, things started falling into place. And the reason I was so serious about it is because I was so passionate about it. You know, I wanted to make a living out of bike racing, and I knew for a fact. Okay, you did, obviously, but I didn't want to waste a single minute in the pub on Saturday night drinking beer. I'd rather, you know, be in bed and be thinking about what I'm going to do in the next day, really. But I'd have a couple of pints after the weekend for sure.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, from my side, I kind of fell into racing by accident, really, and with no intention of doing it as a professional for a living. It was purely to get rid of my adrenaline on the track instead of on a road bike in a safer environment. But kind of that's what everybody did. Then I got a 600 and started club racing, and was probably faster getting drunk on a Saturday night than I was flipping on the track on a Sunday. So yeah, 1992, obviously you come through the BSB ranks on the team doing Kawasaki's, and 92 British champion on the 750s, you know, and again on a real strong depth of field. But then 93 and 4, you went off to race 500s, Grand Prix bikes. Obviously you would have been looking at that championship and desperate as the best championship in the world. But how big a job was it to jump from a 754 stroke, the old 750s obviously, onto the 500s?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a massive undertaking for sure. The deal was, I wanted to do Grand Prix. I'd seen Jamie Whittam and Carl Fogarty do a couple of rides the year before. I thought, you know what, that's where I really want to be out. So I got offered the chance with the Paget's bike to do it, and believe it or not, I didn't get paid for the first year I did it, and but I'd banked enough so I could see myself through. And yeah, I mean, it was one of those things that if you'd asked me to do it now, would I have done it again? Probably not, because you know, I don't think it furthered my career in any way. The bikes we had weren't, I mean, they were great bikes. Paget's do make a great bike, but for instance, my bike down at Hockenheim was 20 mile an hour slower than Ito's Honda, factory Honda. So I mean, you don't stand a chance. I mean, they've got the best tyres, the best riders in the world, and the best bikes. And I was sort of floundering really, if you like, for 2 years. So don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it, and I saw the world and made some fantastic friends. I raced against some of the best riders in the world. Well, I was on the grid with some of the best riders in the world. But yeah, it was a tough old deal. But 2 strokes and 4 strokes, I didn't really mind, because I've spent most of my life on a 2-stroke anyway. So I pretty well knew how they work. But yeah, it was a tough old job.
Yeah, I mean, like you're saying, then obviously, of course, it's the best championship and obviously the best riders in the world. And my point being is knowing how competitive and serious you are about winning. You know, I've got a 1993 and 94. Wayne Rainey, Luca Cadlora, Mick Doohan, BT, Ito, Kaczynski, Chandler, Maladin, Foggy, Creville, Barras, Swans, Goddard, Mackenzie, Haslam, Spencer, McWilliams, James Hayden, Emmett, Crafer, a lot of big names.
Yeah, I mean, to finish in the top 10 or 12, you know, you really have to be on it, and it really was a tough old call. But you know, we had some fantastic racing, and it was a battle of the Brits really, when Sean Emmett, myself, and Neil Mackenzie occasionally, and Joe McWilliams. Yeah, I mean, it was really a race between our lot, really, to see who could come out tops.
You know, and obviously, I suppose that was the motivation as much as anything, because you know you're never going to compete against the factory bike, because you know with there being such a big speed difference. But you know, there has to be a motivation to go racing anyway. And I guess people like obviously Sean Emmett, who's been one of your teammates, you know, fabulous rider, so much natural talent, you know, and a very quick rider who was lucky enough to get a good tryout with Lucky Strike Suzuki.
Well, again, you know, that was what my dream was really, to get picked up by a factory team. But to be quite honest with you, looking back to that, I was probably too old. You know, I was 28, 29 years old at the time, so they're not really going to look at me. And I was absolutely gutted when Sean Emmett got that factory Lucky Strike ride, because my name had been put forward to that. But yeah, you know, that's just the way things are. But I was a late starter when I started racing, and of course I was always playing catch up, and that's another reason why every time I put my leg over a bike, you know, I wanted to make it count, because I knew that the time was running out.
Yeah, I think, you know, Sean Emmett still talks about obviously that time, obviously testing those bikes and the Lucky Strike bikes, and pretty much, but I think back then still had to bring a budget with him to the team to, you know, go forward and to race the full season, which in the modern day is the only way forward now.
Yeah, again, you know, I've had chats with Neil Mackenzie and over the last few years, and you know, we were in a good time when we were racing. Also yourself, you know, when you actually got paid to race a motorbike. Now, unfortunately, you know, riders are having to take money in, and big money as well, to get a ride, and it's just sad. It really is, because there's so much potential out there and talent, and talent that really can't afford to race as well. And if you know, if they can't afford it, then they're going to be on the stage.
Now, obviously in those early years as well, you sampled some road racing, the Alaman TT. You never really pursued that, and in that era many riders did pursue it to get themselves further and onto bigger and better machinery with better teams. But you never really pursued the TT. Was it just not for you?
Yeah, you're asking me why? Because it scared me to death, to be quite honest with you. I rode it. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to go and watch it, and I've been there about 5 or 6 times. So I pretty well knew the circuit from the top of the mountain down to the finish line. But to learn the circuits from the finish line out towards the top of the mountain, I found a real challenge. And I spent a weekend out there before the TT, and this was back in '89. This was going around in the car at 30 miles an hour. I knew exactly where I was, and I had a map and watched the videos and everything else. But when it came to getting on the bike, I went down the Bray Hill, got into Union Mills, which is about 3.5 miles out. I was lost, totally lost, because I'd arrived there so fast. You know, the bike was in front of my brain, and anyway, I spent most of the time learning the circuit, and never really took any risks. But I think what really brought it home to me was going over the top of Bagara. You know, as you go down the hill, and then as it bottoms out to the bottom of the hill. And Steve Hislop came past me, just as I was rolling the throttle to go down over the hill. He came past, changed up another gear, and you know, sort of disappearing into the distance, bottomed out, sparked off the bottom of his bike, and I thought then, you know what, if that's what you've got to do to win a TT, you can flip and keep it, because I'm never going to do that. That's another world.
Yeah, without doubt, and you know, and it's not for everybody. You know, it's one of those things, but I think you either click with it, or you're at ease with it when you're riding, or you're not. And there's an awful lot of top level riders that can't really adapt that style of riding. You know, and like I said, everybody's different. You just mentioned the name there, Steve Hislop. Obviously, you had some fantastic times racing Steve. Unfortunately, obviously he was killed in his helicopter. I can't remember what year it was, but many moons ago now. But what a fabulous talent, and probably, you know, underrated to a certain. Until he passed away, he was underrated, I think.
He was one of the fastest riders ever. You know, on his day, you couldn't beat him. Around the Alaman TT for sure, and on short circuits. I remember a day at Donington Park, I don't know what year it was, but I think it was on a Monster Mob Ducati. And the Grand Prix guys had been there a month or so before, and I think Rossi had set the lap record. And Steve Hislop went out and qualified on a faster time than Rossi had set on his factory Yamaha, or 100 I think it was at the time. So that just goes to show how fast Steve Hislop was on his day. He was a great lad, and you know, I miss him dearly. We learned to fly the helicopter together, and you know, he gave me a lot of tips. In fact, we were racing for the championships the same year, because we were racing to see who could get the pilot's license first, but he beat me on that one.
Yeah, it was 2002, I think, when he was on the Monster Mob Ducati, and I think the same year he went to Cadwell Park for the BSB, and I think on lap 4 of the first free practice he was under the lap record. That's just, if Hizzy was happy, it was so hard to beat.
Scary, that's why it's handed that. But yeah, I mean, to do that on lap 4 of, on a fresh circuit, crazy.
Now, obviously 2 years at GP's riding, 2 strokes on a Harris chassis 500. Fantastic experience, but 95 he went on to race World Superbikes on the Rev 8 Kawasaki. Now, obviously over the years, the team owner, team boss, Ben Atkins, friend, sponsor, team boss, how did that all come about?
Well, I met Ben back in 1992 when we were at Daytona, and they came across and had a bit of a chat there. I was riding the Kawasaki, and as I say, so made contact. In 93, as you rightly say, I went Grand Prix racing. He followed me around the world with his wife June. Then in 94, he put some money in to sponsor me for riding in the Grand Prix. But he could see that there really wasn't, that much potential in what we were doing there. So he dragged me aside and said, "Look, why don't we set a team up?" Come on, Ben, don't we? I mean, not just British Championship racing, this was World Superbike. But the guy's a very, very intelligent guy, and he knew exactly what he took, and he had the money behind him. I think he did have the money, but only just, really, to set this team up. But he put his money where his mouth was and set the team up, and exactly that. We managed, because I got some good contacts with Kawasaki, we had contacts with the factory, and they managed to give us some support, and that's really how it all started with Ben, but massive commitment from him.
And obviously you had many years, obviously Ben Atkins was the man behind Red Bull Ducati, so he had many years, I think 5 years at Red Bull Ducati. Obviously very passionate about his racing, lovely fella anyway. And is Ben Atkins still involved or still interested in the racing side now you've stopped?
Well, yeah, I mean, he's lost a bit of interest. I mean, his daughter Karen was going out with Craig Jones when Craig was killed at Cadwell Park, very sadly. Craig was a massive friend of mine and knocked my son for 6 when obviously that happened, like he did for most people. So really, I think Ben took a back seat from that. But as time's gone on, things heal. Funny enough, I was actually talking to Ben just 3 months ago regarding racing, and I did say, would you fancy setting a team up again? We had some serious chats about it, but anyway, things are put on the back burner at the moment, but that's not to say in the future he will come back, and I'm sure he will.
And obviously, with Ben, he's a very successful businessman, wealthy fella. A little bit like some of the guys I've ridden for, in the past. A bit like Paul Bird is another one, running his own team. But how was he to race for? Could he keep the business side away from the passion?
Yeah, no, it's hard at times. I mean, he never really had a spat at me. If he was displeased with something I'd done, he'd probably walk off. Having said that, there was one occasion where I didn't realise this, but at Silverstone we'd got some potential sponsors coming to view the team. So things carried on. A Sunday morning I'd gone out, and Sean Emmett was he was my teammate, I just needed to beat him every time I saw him, I hated him at one point, but he became one of the closest friends, to be quite honest with you, but at the time I wasn't a massive fan of his. And anyway, this morning it was a wet practice on the Sunday morning warm-up, and I'd crashed as you go through turn 1 into the fast turn 2, which is the fast left at the end of the straight, and I lost the front going into that. It was a massive crash, and I was absolutely disgusted. I got away with it and got back to the pits. I was absolutely filthy. Walked into the garage, and I've never done this before in my life, but got my helmet and slung it into the side of the garage. And Ben saw me, just as he's telling the sponsors just what a nice-natured professional rider I am. Anyway, that was it. He dragged me by the scruff of the neck and dragged me out, and he gave me right round that day. But yeah, so that was probably the only time that he really did give me any grief, really, to be fair.
Right, Right, so obviously that season, with it being a new team, and obviously, or a brand new team, especially to the World Superbike paddock, how was it against, again, a fantastic field back in those days? I think Foggy was champion that year, but a massive amount of big names, very competitive riders. I think you had a couple of podiums that year on the Kawasaki's, but how was it competing against those guys?
Yeah, it was tough. It really was. I mean, again, you need the best. We had a good bike, but we didn't have all the full factory support that we probably would like to have had. Buzzy Kawasaki at the time with the people, and the tyres again. We probably had the second notch down from the factory boys. But having said that, the first meeting we did was at Hockenheim. And I qualified on the front row, so the bike really wasn't that bad. But having said that, I've got to give Fogarty credit for that, for giving me a tow round. But, it was a great start, but then things went downhill a bit from there. But having said that, I think we had 3 or 4 podiums that year, which really at the end of that year, you probably do know that Ben got wins that Suzuki were coming in to do World Superbike. And he realised we had a bit of a tough year, and he put my name forward to Suzuki to be one of their riders, and that's really how that came around. And so what Ben did then was pull his team into mothballs, and let me go then onto the factory Suzuki to have a year in '96 on the factory line on the GSXR.
You just mentioned there, obviously, circuit-wise, Hockenheim. What a fabulous track. It's obviously not raced on now, not in the same layout. But what would your favourite circuit be?
It wasn't Hockenheim for sure. I remember talking about Hockenheim. When we were on about Ito having a bike 20 mile an hour faster than mine, he came past me on the first straight that goes into the woods. And it's a straight, it's not, it's a flat out 6th gear right-hander, isn't it? And he came past me and then sort of disappeared around the corner. As I came round, he'd actually sat up and was cruising. Well, you know what a bike's like, 170 odd mile an hour, it doesn't want to move, does it? I sort of sat up, saw him, tried to move out of the way of him, but then missed my braking point by 40 yards or so. Hit the brakes, hit the rumble strip on the side of the track, car wheeled into the gravel, and I remember lying there, my visor was off and everything, and I'd lost my vision in one eye. I was blind in this eye. Anyway, I remember being carted off into the ambulance and telling the German doctor there, I'm blind in this eye, is it a problem? Hoping that he was going to say, don't worry about it. But he said, yes, it is a problem. Well, I mean, all I wanted was reassurance. But anyway, lucky enough, I lay in the back of the ambulance. I kept doing this, and the black silhouette of the window, the blackened out window, I could just see bits of light, a bit more, and then it actually came back slowly, but God, that was scary. But so that wasn't my favourite circuit, to be fair. Too fast for me. I didn't like fast tracks. I think in England, probably Brands Hatch, and World, I think probably Phillip Island, but they're very similar circuits anyway.
So back in that day, 2 years, 93, 94 in the 500 paddock, shall we say, in Grand Prix. How different was it coming into race lifestyle-wise, and just kind of the atmosphere around a paddock going from GPs into World Superbike?
Yeah, well, I was very conscious that I was taking, if you like, a step back, and a lot of riders can think that, but I actually absolutely made sure that it wasn't going to be a step back in my eyes, because I knew that the riders I was going to be racing against were top level riders anyway. And but yeah, I mean, of course, you're mixing with in Grand Prix massive motorhomes, articulated lorries for transporters and stuff like that. And back in the day, you came back to the paddock and it was transit vans and caravans. But to be fair, I never really had a massive. Well, I did for the second year in Grand Prix. I had a big motorhome, but I was never the sort of person that was earning the money that they were earning. I was just one of the lads back in the UK that was there going to go scratching week in, week out to earn a crust. So no, it didn't really matter to me. I mean, racing is racing, and at the end of the day, there's always going to be somebody there better than you, or trying to beat you anyway.
I think 1995. Or that year on your World Superbike year, Foggy, Luciari, Spencer, Russell, Gobert, Slight, McLeod, Corsa, Crafer, Morrison, another old teammate of yours, Bontempi, Perovino, Reimer, Casoli, Marigali, Mertens, Doug Poland, Colin Edwards, Frankie Keeley, Nagai. was killed that year, I think, at Aston.
Yeah, he was killed in Essen. Yeah, he got, in fact, it was Pervano, I think, that spilled some oil down on the track. And that guy went in the oil and the bike bounced and landed on top of him, unfortunately. But yeah, so yeah, there's some fantastic riders, some good names, and of course all the factories were involved in that the period of time. So every bike was a factory bike. So you know, you're up against it.
Good. Has anybody got any questions? That's simple enough, eh? If anybody has any questions, just stick your hand up or give me a nod, and I'll come and ask them. So you mentioned already, obviously, Ben put the team on mothballs, or his own team, shall we say, the Reve Kawasaki team. So, which was fantastic, really, to let you go away and ride on factory Suzuki's. Was that Whittam, your teammate?
No, it was Kurt McCarthy.
Kurt McCarthy, sorry, Kurt. In the World Superbike Championship, but I think fair to say not really the best bike for quite a way through the season anyway, you know, or certainly the team seemed to struggle a little bit to get a thing on the pace.
Yeah, we did have issues, and I had a stability issue, to be fair, and that caused a big problem throughout the year. And I don't know whether it was me. It must have been the way I sat on the bike, but Kurt McCarthy never had a problem. We went to Daytona for the first test we ever had on the bikes, and we didn't have the tyres that we'll be racing with. We had just ordinary Michelin race rubber, which would do about 5 or 6 laps around Daytona. And you know, I got within a second and a half of the lap record on the first time there, and the bike was as stable as a rock, and everything was fantastic. So we came away. This was in, I think, November time, and of course we went back in January for Daytona 200. And the first time we went out on the bike with race rubber on it, the thing just wobbled his head off. I got onto the top of the banking, just as I was coming off the top of the banking, click top gear, come down, and it would start into a wobble like this. And this was lap in, lap out, and I mean, I was scared stiff, because I mean, you're doing about 180 mile an hour at this time. But Kurt McCarthy was no problem whatsoever. And I thought, this is going to be a tough old weekend, this. Anyway, lucky as it happened, what they decided to do was, on race day, I'd go out and do a lap and then come in, because it was too dangerous for me to be out there, to be fair. But lucky enough, the night before the race, there was a hurricane, and the race was cancelled, so we got away with it, sort of scot-free. But yeah, tough old times, they really were. And again, it's Hockenheim, the stability problem we had, and really made me so I couldn't ride the bike. And I honestly, to this day, do not know what it was. Kurt McCarthy rode it, and he didn't have a problem. Same sort of size as me. Whether I was holding on too hard, or we even swapped helmets at one point, believe it or not, to see if it was aerodynamics.
So, obviously Daytona, you mentioned Daytona. You know, I've never raced Daytona. I've been there for tests and various things, and walked up the banking. How different a circuit with that steep banking is it to ride than a normal track?
Daytona is unbelievable, it really is. I mean, the first time I got there, I walked up the banking, as you well know. Walking up the banking is not easy. For instance, the first time I got there, I took Kurt McCarthy around in a pickup truck, and I said, come on, I'll take you around, Kurt, and we'll show you the circuit. He'd never been there before. And we hit the banking around about 80 or 90 mile an hour in this pickup truck, went up to the top of the bank, and 90 mile an hour wasn't fast enough to keep the truck on the top of the bank. The truck was slid down like this. It's incredible. And the next thing I realised was that you're actually not looking forward when you're going on the bank. You've actually got to look over there, because that's where you're actually going. You're not going in a straight line, you can't take a corner. So it's an experience, and you know, it's something I don't think I'd want to do again, but you know, hats off to the guys that are doing year in, year out, because it is such a scary corner, that.
Yeah, certainly. There's been some fantastic races there over the years for the Daytona 200, and it was supposed to have been cancelled for this year, 2015, but apparently it's just all been put back.